This isn't about socialism. It's not about Scandinavian exceptionalism or some fantasy welfare state where everyone gets free houses. And it's definitely not about how Norway just has oil money. But before we dive into what this is about, if you've ever felt like homeownership is slipping further away no matter how hard you work, hit that like button. This video is going to challenge everything you think you know about why housing feels impossible. Here's what this is about. A 27-year-old barista in Austin making $35,000 a year. She's been saving for 3 years. She has $18,000 in the bank. The median home price in her city? $550,000. She needs $110,000 just for the down payment. At her current savings rate, she'll be 41 years old before she can buy. That's 14 more years of rent checks disappearing into someone else's mortgage. Now here's the part that breaks economics as we know it. A 27-year-old Norwegian with the exact same income has a homeownership rate of 78.8%. In the United States, it's 65.3%. But here's the twist, Norway's housing isn't cheaper. Oslo apartments average $520,000 to $735,000. Their mortgage rates in 2025 averaged 4.97%. While ours sit at 6.21%. So how is this possible? The answer isn't what you think. And it reveals something uncomfortable about what America actually prioritizes. Her name is Emma. She's 29. Works as a graphic designer in Oslo. Makes about 550,000 Norwegian kroner a year. That's roughly 54,000 US dollars. Not impressive. Just average. 5 years ago, Emma was exactly where that Austin barista is now. Paycheck to paycheck. Terrified of getting priced out forever. Before, Emma didn't have wealthy parents. She couldn't afford to save big chunks of her salary while paying Oslo rent, which averages $1,760 a month for a one-bedroom in the city center. She looked at apartment prices, 4 to 6 million kroner. That's $392,000 to 588,000 US dollars. With Norway's equity requirement at the time demanding 15% down, she needed $59,000 to $88,000 just to get in the door. She felt the same crushing math every young American feels. And if you're feeling that math right now, if you're stuck between rising rents and impossible down payments, subscribe and turn on notifications. Because this channel breaks down the economic systems that shape your life, not just the symptoms. Except Norway gave her 3 things America doesn't. First, a BSU account. It's a housing savings account available to anyone under 34. She could deposit up to 27,500 kroner per year, about $2,695, and the government gave her a 20% tax deduction on every deposit. That's up to 5,500 kroner reduction in taxes owed, over $500 back. Every year. For multiple years, she could stack up to 300,000 kroner, nearly $29,400, with the government literally subsidizing her path to homeownership. Second, the equity requirement dropped to 10% in January 2025. Her down payment need went from $59,000 to $39,000. Suddenly, achievable. Third, she didn't buy an apartment. She bought a share in a borettslag, a housing cooperative. Instead of outright ownership, she purchased a stake in a collectively owned building. Lower upfront costs. Shared maintenance. Less risk. Emma closed on a 2-bedroom cooperative apartment this past spring. Her monthly housing cost? About 12,000 kroner, $176 USD, covering mortgage, co-op fees, utilities. That's less than she was paying in rent. And now she's building equity. She didn't get rich. She didn't inherit wealth. She just got a system designed to let people like her in. Emma isn't an outlier. She's the norm. Let's zoom out. Homeownership rates. Norway, 78.8% in 2024. The United States, 65.3% as of Q3 2025. That's a 13.5 percentage point gap. In a country of 330 million, that represents over 40 million people locked out of ownership who would own in a Norwegian-style system. The affordability equation. In the US, the median home price hit $410,800 in Q2 2025. Median household income? $83,730. That's a price-to-income ratio of 4.9 to 1. According to Harvard's Joint Center for Housing Studies, this is near an all-time high. It means the typical American home costs nearly 5 times what the typical American household earns in a year. For context, in 1985, that ratio was under 3 to 1. Translation: housing has outpaced income growth by 67% in 40 years. Drop a comment right now and tell me, how many years would it take you to save a 20% down payment at your current income? Oh wait, because these aren't just statistics, these are real lives being shaped by policy choices. Now look at Norway. Average house prices in November 2025 sat at 4.77 million kroner, about $468,000. Median Norwegian household income? Roughly 850,000 kroner, about $83,300. But here's where it gets shocking. Their actual price-to-income ratio is around 8.5 to 1 in mid-2025. That's worse than America's, right? And yet they have 13 percentage points higher homeownership. Here's the difference. In Norway, subsidized savings accounts help young buyers accumulate down payments. The BSU program offers a 20% tax deduction, not 10%, making every kroner saved go further. The US has nothing comparable. No tax-advantaged first-time buyer accounts. No federal savings match. In Norway, reforms in January 2025 dropped the equity requirement to 10%. In the US, conventional loans still demand 20% to avoid PMI. FHA loans allow 3.5%, but come with mortgage insurance that bleeds buyers dry. In Norway, cooperative housing, borettslag, accounts for a massive share of the market. You're not buying the building, you're buying shares. It's cheaper to enter, less risky, collectively maintained. In the US, co-op housing exists in pockets of New York and a few other cities. Everywhere else, it's buy the whole asset or rent forever. The result? Over half, 50.3% of renter households in the US are cost-burdened, spending over 30% of income on housing. Another 27% are severely burdened at over 50% of income. In Norway, 9 to 15% of households overall face similar burdens, though urban areas like Oslo can reach 30%. Higher price ratios, but better access. One country said, let's make it easier to get in. The other said, figure it out yourself. Time to be honest. Norway's system is not perfect. It's not a utopia. And if you're thinking of moving there to exploit this, pump the brakes. Here's the catch. First, prices are still insane. Emma's $392,000 to $588,000 apartment is a typical 2-bedroom. Not a penthouse. Not luxury. Just a place to live. Central Oslo apartments run $520,000 to $735,000 for 50 to 80 square meters. Single-family detached homes? Easily $1.40 to $1.90 million. If you want space, you pay dearly. And housing prices in Norway increased 4.54% year-over-year in Q2 2025. They're not immune to the global affordability crisis. Their price-to-income ratio of 8.5 to 1 is actually worse than America's 4.9 to 1. Second, down payments are still brutal. Yes, the equity requirement dropped to 10% in January 2025. But 10% of $468,000 is still $46,800. Even with the BSU savings program maxing out at $29,400, that's years of disciplined saving. If you're earning below median income, or you have student debt, or medical bills, or kids, good luck. Third, co-ops come with trade-offs. When you buy into a borettslag, you don't own the apartment outright. You own shares in a cooperative. That means you need co-op board approval to sell. You're subject to collective decision-making for building maintenance and upgrades. If the co-op takes on debt for repairs, you're on the hook for your share. It's cheaper to enter, but you sacrifice control. Fourth, foreigners face higher barriers. DNB, Norway's largest bank, requires 25% equity from non-citizens, more than double the 10% requirement for Norwegians. If you're an expat or immigrant, the system is measurably harder. Fifth, high taxes elsewhere. Norway's income tax rates are steep. The BSU program gives you a 20% deduction, but overall, Norwegians pay significantly more in taxes than Americans. That money funds social infrastructure, but it's not free. Sixth, the overvaluation problem. Oslo Metropolitan University's Housing Lab reported in Q3 2024 that Norwegian real house prices were overvalued by 32%, up from 18% just 1 quarter earlier. There's a bubble risk. If it pops, young buyers who just got in could be underwater on their mortgages. This is not a fairy tale. Norway has expensive housing, worse price-to-income ratios than the US, regional inequality, and serious financial risk. But here's what it does have: intentional design to help people get in the door. That's the difference. And if that difference matters to you, if you think we should be talking about these alternatives instead of just accepting that's how it is, share this video. Send it to that friend who's been saving for years. Post it in your group chats. Because this conversation doesn't happen unless we make it happen. So what are we actually talking about here? This isn't about Norway versus America. It's not about which country is better. It's about what you optimize for. In Norway, the system is designed around a specific value. Homeownership is a public good. It stabilizes communities. It builds intergenerational wealth. It reduces inequality. So the government subsidizes savings accounts with 20% tax deductions. It regulates down payments to 10%. It promotes cooperative models. The priority is, get people into homes. Even when their price-to-income ratio hits 8.5 to 1, nearly double America's, they maintain 78.8% homeownership because the barriers to entry are systematically lowered. In America, the system is designed around a different value. Housing is a market commodity. Prices should reflect supply and demand. Government shouldn't interfere too much. If you can't afford it, you work harder, save longer, or move somewhere cheaper. The priority is, protect market efficiency and property values. Neither is inherently evil, but they produce wildly different outcomes. In Norway, 78.8% of people own homes despite an 8.5 to 1 price-to-income ratio. The system assumes, if you work, we'll help you get in. In America, 65.3% own homes with a 4.9 to 1 ratio. The system assumes, ownership is earned, not guaranteed. Here's the uncomfortable part. The US could implement versions of Norway's policies. Tax-advantaged housing savings accounts for people under 34 with 20% deductions. Federal co-investment programs. Expanded support for housing cooperatives. Reduced down payment requirements for first-time buyers. We don't. But because American housing policy is built around a paradox, we want housing to be affordable for buyers, but we also want it to appreciate for owners. Those are opposing goals. Every time you make housing cheaper for new buyers, you reduce wealth accumulation for current owners, who vote. So we're stuck in this loop. Prices rise. Over 50% of renters get squeezed. Homeowners get richer. Politicians talk about affordability. Nothing fundamentally changes. Norway broke that loop by deciding, homeownership access, maximum wealth extraction. America hasn't. And that's a choice. Not an inevitability. Emma's story isn't possible in the US. Not because Americans are less capable, but because the system isn't designed for Emmas. It's designed for people who already have money. So here's my question for you, and I really want you to think about it. What are you actually optimizing for? Do you want a system that makes it easier for young people to buy, even if it means your own home doesn't appreciate as fast? Or do you want maximum property value growth, even if it locks out the next generation? Because you can't have both. And whichever one you choose, that's the housing market you get. Drop your answer in the comments. And here's a harder question. If you're a homeowner, would you support policies that help first-time buyers even if it meant slower appreciation on your property? And if you're trying to buy, what's the one policy change you'd implement tomorrow? The algorithm only shows this to more people if you engage. So like, comment, and subscribe if you want more videos that actually examine why the system works the way it does. I'll see you in the next one.